In the quiet town of West Pittston, Pennsylvania, a seemingly ordinary family moved into a duplex in 1973. They were hard-working, devout Catholics, raising their children and caring for elderly parents under one roof. But within a few years, the home would become anything but ordinary. The Smurl family would go on to report nearly a decade of terrifying, unexplained phenomena, ranging from shadowy figures and foul smells to violent attacks and demonic oppression. Their story became one of the most controversial and chilling paranormal cases ever investigated in the United States. This is the Smurl haunting. 1973, the move-in. The Smurl family, Jack, Janet, and their children, move into a duplex at 328 Chase Street in West Pittston, Pennsylvania, alongside Jack's parents, John and Mary. 1974 to 1979, subtle disturbances begin. Water stains appear on walls that no plumber can explain. Appliances break constantly, despite repairs. Unexplained cold spots and foul odours occur in the home. Distant voices and footsteps are heard, even when no one is around. However, some things were much more frightening. The following is an event witnessed by Janet Smurl. Janet Smurl had just settled into bed for the night. Her husband, Jack, lay beside her, already drifting into sleep. Their home on Chase Street seemed quiet, peaceful even. But that peace would soon be shattered by something terrifying. According to Janet, the air in the bedroom suddenly grew dense, as though the room itself had become pressurized. Then, without warning, a foul odor filled the air. A stench so strong and vile, she would later describe it as rotting flesh mixed with sulfur. As she sat up in bed, trying to understand where the smell was coming from, she noticed movement in the far corner of the room. At first, she thought it was just a trick of the shadows, but it wasn't. A dark, shapeless figure began to emerge from the corner, slowly drifting toward the bed. It had no eyes, no mouth, no features at all, but it radiated something malevolent. Janet would later say she felt as though the figure wanted something, or someone. Paralyzed with fear, she tried to scream, but no sound came. She reached over to shake her husband, but Jack didn't respond at first. It was only when the entity moved closer, hovering near the side of the bed, that he suddenly woke up, and in that instant, the shadow vanished. Gone. The room returned to silence, but the smell lingered, as did the feeling of being watched. Janet and Jack wouldn't sleep the rest of the night. It was one of the earliest and most disturbing manifestations in what would become a decade-long haunting, filled with physical attacks, unexplained noises, and terrifying apparitions. The Smurl family believed that something dark had taken hold of their home, and they were no longer alone. The next event happened in 1985 to Jack Smurl. Jack was at home, recovering from heart surgery. As his wife, Janet, and daughters went about their day, Jack remained in bed, weak but alert. He would later say that the house had been eerily quiet all morning. Too quiet, he remembered. Then it happened. According to Jack, the room turned icy cold. The light in the corner flickered, though there was no power issue in the home. Before he could even call out for help, an invisible force descended upon him, pinning him to the mattress. Jack struggled, thrashing against what he described as a weight pressing down on his chest, but he couldn't move. He tried to scream, but no words came out. Then, in one of the most terrifying claims of the entire Smurl case, Jack reported that he was indecently assaulted by the entity. He would later recall the feeling of cold, claw-like hands touching him, and a disturbing presence that seemed to both mock and violate him. He said he could feel its breath, hear it whisper in guttural tones, though he couldn't understand the language. When it finally released him, Jack lay trembling and soaked in sweat. But the worst part, he said, wasn't the assault itself. It was the sense of total helplessness, the realization that whatever was in that house was intelligent, and it had chosen him. Jack was a devout Catholic and a quiet man. For him to speak publicly about the experience took immense courage. He would later say he didn't want to believe it had happened, but he knew what he had felt, and he was convinced it wasn't a dream, it wasn't sleep paralysis, something had attacked him in his own bed. As the Smurl case gained national attention, the media circled in. Some saw a desperate family under siege, others saw something else entirely. Local journalists questioned the family's motives. Were they exaggerating the events? Was it a bid for fame or a response to personal stress? Some skeptics pointed out the lack of physical evidence, no photographs of apparitions, no verifiable recordings, no neighbours reporting similar phenomena. Even the Catholic diocese refused to sanction the exorcisms, distancing itself from the case despite multiple reports of demonic activity. But the Smurls never wavered. They insisted they never sought publicity and claimed the worst moments happened after reporters left. By 1986, the Smurl family was desperate, and the house had become a battleground. Unexplained knocking, shadowy apparitions, foul odours, physical attacks. It was happening nearly every day. Despite their faith, prayers and blessings, nothing seemed to work. So the family sought help from renowned demonologists, Ed and Lorraine Warren. After multiple visits, the Warrens agreed. A demonic presence was in the home. Enter Father Robert McKenna, a traditional Catholic priest experienced in exorcisms. On a hot August day, Father McKenna arrived at the Smurl residence and began the rite of exorcism in Latin. Holy water was sprinkled, prayers of protection were recited. What happened during that exorcism would leave everyone shaken. As the prayers intensified, a deep, guttural growl echoed through the walls, as though the house itself were growling back. Family members began to cry out, and furniture rattled violently in place. Then came one of the most terrifying moments. The family's dog, a small terrier, began to levitate off the ground. Witnesses, including the Warrens, claimed that the animal hovered for several seconds before being flung across the room. Father McKenna pressed on, but the atmosphere grew increasingly hostile. At one point, the priest reportedly became physically ill, breaking into a sweat and nearly collapsing mid-prayer. When it was over, the haunting paused, but only for a few days. The Smurls reported that the entity returned, angrier than before. For the family, it confirmed their worst fear. This wasn't something that could be reasoned with. It couldn't be blessed away. It wanted them gone or destroyed. When renowned psychic Lorraine Warren first stepped into the Smurl home in 1986, she immediately sensed it, a darkness, not just in one room, but throughout the house. She would later say the air felt thick, charged, like a thunderstorm waiting to break. As she entered the master bedroom, she felt an overwhelming wave of sorrow, followed by rage. Lorraine claimed to have seen a black shadowy mass in the corner of the room, inhuman in shape, radiating hate. She described it as a demonic entity, ancient and intelligent. She also claimed the entity could mimic voices, often imitating the family members to lure or torment them. It didn't just want attention, it wanted destruction. Lorraine left the house shaken. Of all the cases she and Ed had handled, she considered this one among the most dangerous. By early 1987, after years of unexplained attacks, failed exorcisms, and national media attention, the Smurl family had reached their limit. The entity had torn through nearly every aspect of their lives, emotionally, physically, spiritually. With nowhere else to turn, Jack and Janet made the most difficult decision of their lives. They would leave their home on Chase Street behind. The house they'd once believed would be their forever home had become a prison. They relocated to Wilkes-Barre, hoping the entity wouldn't follow, and for a time, it didn't. But peace didn't come easily. Jack reported hearing voices in the new house. Janet claimed she still felt watched. The church remained distant. The skeptics remained loud. And the trauma never quite faded. Despite the controversy, the Smurls never recanted their story. In fact, they co-authored a book with Ed and Lorraine Warren titled The Haunted, detailing every moment of their ordeal. To this day, no definitive explanation has been given for what happened inside 328 Chase Street. The house still stands, new families have moved in, and none have reported anything unusual. Was it mass hysteria, a cry for help, or was it something far darker, something that defies reason and walks the line between faith and fear? One thing is certain, the Smurl family believed they lived through something no one should have to endure. And whether you believe their story or not, they were never the same again.